Patricia Kane sat in her office on the 42nd floor of the Earth Defense Building. She was reading the same message for the third time. The words were clear, but she could not believe what they meant. The Galactic Council was angry. Very angry. The message came through space, using special channels that could send words faster than light. It was written in the formal language that all the alien races used when they talked to each other. Patricia had learned this language years ago when she became Earth's main person for talking to aliens. The message said that Earth had to explain what happened at Kepler 442. The Council called it a war crime. They said humans had acted like wild animals. They wanted someone to come to their main building on Centauri Prime to explain why humans should not be punished. Patricia put the message down and looked out her window. She could see the busy streets of New York City below. People walked around, doing normal things. They had no idea that their whole planet might be in trouble because of what one ship captain had done 3 weeks ago. The trouble started when Captain Jake Morrison was flying his cargo ship to New Brisbane. His ship was called the Helena. It was not a warship. It was just a big truck that carried things through space. Jake and his 12 crew members were taking medicine to sick people on New Brisbane. On the way there, they heard a call for help. A passenger ship full of Zephyrian aliens was being attacked by pirates. The pirates were called Ravagers. They were mean creatures who liked to hurt people and steal things. They also took prisoners to fight in their arena games for fun. The Zephyrian ship had almost 3,000 people on it. Men, women, children, and old people. They were all going to die or be taken as slaves if no one helped them. Jake Morrison had a choice to make. He could follow the rules and call for help from the military. But the military ships were 6 hours away. By then, all the people on the Zephyrian ship would be dead. Or he could try to help them himself, even though his ship was not made for fighting. Jake chose to help. What happened next became famous very quickly. Jake and his crew fought the Ravager pirates and won. They saved all the people on the Zephyrian ship, but they did it in a way that made the alien governments very upset. The Ravagers were a recognized species in the galaxy. That meant they had rights under galactic law, even though they were pirates. Jake had killed over 300 of them. He used his mining ship like a weapon. He turned cargo boxes into missiles. He even made his ship's power source explode to destroy the enemy ships. The alien governments did not like this. They said Jake had broken 17 different laws about how war should be fought. They said humans were dangerous because they did not follow the rules. Now Patricia had to decide what to do. She called a meeting with all the important people who made decisions for Earth. President Elizabeth Warren was there. So were the generals and admirals who commanded Earth's military forces. They sat around a big table in a room with no windows. The room was safe from anyone who might try to listen to their secrets. Patricia showed them the message from the Galactic Council. They want us to send someone to explain what happened, Patricia said. This person will have to go to Centauri Prime. That is the most heavily guarded place in the galaxy. If they decide we are a threat, whoever we send will never come home. General Patricia Hayes, who commanded the Earth Defense Force, spoke up. What are our options? We could send a team of diplomats, Patricia said. They could apologize and promise it will never happen again. But that would make us look weak. Every pirate and criminal in the galaxy would think they could attack human ships. What else? Asked President Warren. We could send a fleet of warships, Patricia said. Show them we are not afraid. But that might start a war with the entire Galactic Council. We would lose that war. The room was quiet. Everyone knew that Earth's military was strong, but not strong enough to fight 47 different alien races at the same time. There is a third option, Patricia said slowly. We could send exactly what they asked for. One person who can explain what happened and why. Explain what? Asked General Hayes. That we saved almost 3,000 innocent people from pirates? Explain what it means to be human, Patricia said. Why we cannot just stand by and watch people die when we can do something to help them. President Warren leaned forward. Who? Would we send for something like that? Patricia had been thinking about this since she first read the message. We need someone who understands what Jake Morrison did. Someone who has made the same kind of choice. Someone who can show the aliens what humanity is really like. You have someone in mind? Asked General Hayes. Danny Rodriguez, Patricia said. Marine Sergeant. He has been in the military for 15 years. He fought in the Titan campaign. He once captured an entire Ravager battleship by himself. Where is he now? Asked President Warren. On vacation in Colorado. Fishing. General. Hayes smiled. He is not going to like being interrupted. No, Patricia agreed. But he is the right person for this job. He understands what it means to put your life on the line for strangers. He knows why Jake Morrison could not just fly away and let those people die. They voted. Everyone agreed. They would send Danny Rodriguez to face the Galactic Council alone. He would explain why humans acted the way they did. He would show them that humanity was not a threat to the galaxy, but maybe something the galaxy needed. Patricia hoped she was making the right choice. If she was wrong, Earth might face the anger of 47 alien races. But if she was right, maybe the galaxy would finally understand what made humans special. The next morning, Patricia got in a black car and drove to Colorado. She had to find a Marine who was enjoying his first vacation in years and ask him to risk his life for his entire species. She hoped he would say yes. Danny Rodriguez was having the best morning he had experienced in 5 years. He sat by a quiet lake in Colorado, holding a fishing rod and watching the sun come up over the mountains. The water was smooth like glass. Birds were singing in the trees. For the first time in a long time, no one was shooting at him. He had been in the military for 15 years. He had fought on 3 different planets and 2 space stations. He had seen things that would give normal people nightmares. But right now, all he wanted was to catch a fish and maybe take a nap in the sun. The sound of a car coming up the dirt road made him look up. A black government car was driving toward his cabin. Danny sighed. He had been expecting this visit, ever since he heard about the Helena incident on the news. The car stopped, and a woman in a military uniform got out. Danny recognized her right away. General Patricia Hayes was the person in charge of Earth's entire military. If she was here in person, something big was happening. "Good morning, Sergeant Rodriguez," she said as she walked over to where he was sitting. "General Hayes," Danny replied. He started to stand up, but she waved for him to stay seated. "Keep fishing," she said. "This might be the last peaceful moment you have for a while." Danny cast his line back into the water. "Let me guess. The Galactic Council wants someone to explain why we saved a bunch of civilians from pirates. And you want me to fly across the galaxy to tell them that helping people is what humans do." General Hayes smiled. "You always were smart, Rodriguez. That is exactly what we need. And if they do not like my explanation, Centauri Prime has enough weapons to destroy our entire fleet. If they decide you are a threat, you will not be coming home." Danny thought about this for 3 seconds. "When do I leave?" "Tomorrow morning. The ship is already prepared." Danny reeled in his fishing line. "Tell me about these aliens I will be talking to." General Hayes sat down on a log next to him. "The Galactic Council has 47 different species. 3 of them make most of the decisions. The Zephyrians are like big lizards who care about honor and tradition. The Crystalline Collective are made of living crystal, and they think like computers. The Hegemony is a bunch of different species who believe in following rules above everything. else. And they all think we are dangerous? They think we are unpredictable. They cannot understand why someone would risk their life for strangers. To them, Jake Morrison should have followed the rules and waited for backup. Danny nodded. Even if that meant letting 3,000 people die, even then. That evening, Danny packed his bag. He did not need much. A few uniforms, some personal things, and a bottle of whiskey that General Hayes had given him as a gift for the aliens. She said it was for diplomacy, but Danny thought it was more likely for his own nerves. The next morning, a small ship picked him up. It was called the USC Defiant. It was fast and had good weapons, but it was still just one ship going into the heart of alien space. The captain was a young woman named Lisa Carter, who looked nervous about the whole mission. 3 weeks to Centauri Prime, she told Danny as they left Earth's orbit. 3 weeks back if things go well. And if they do not go well, then we will not be coming back. During the long trip through space, Danny spent his time learning about the aliens he would face. He read reports about their cultures, their laws, and their way of thinking. The more he learned, the more he understood why they were afraid of. Humans. Every other species in the galaxy thought the same way. They followed rules. They made plans. They calculated risks before they acted. Humans were different. Humans acted on feelings and instincts. They did crazy things that made no sense to anyone else, like flying a cargo ship against a fleet of pirate warships to save people they had never met. Danny also learned about the Ravagers. They were a species that had been raiding and killing for thousands of years. They took prisoners to fight in their arena games. They tortured people for fun. But they were still a recognized species under galactic law, which meant they had rights. The fact that Jake Morrison had killed over 300 of them was being treated as a war crime. The fact that he had saved almost 3,000 innocent people seemed less important to the aliens. On the last day of the trip, Danny put on his dress uniform. Every ribbon and medal was in the right place. He looked like what he was, a professional soldier who had spent his life serving his country. And his species. Ambassador Kane met him when the ship arrived at Centauri Prime. She was the human representative to the Galactic Council. She looked worried. Sergeant Rodriguez, she said, I have to warn you, the mood here is very bad. They are not just questioning what Jake Morrison did. They are questioning whether humans should be allowed to travel in space at all. Danny looked out at the alien space station. It was huge, bigger than any city on Earth. Ships from dozens of different species were docked there. He could see the council building in the center, a massive structure that looked like it was designed to make visitors feel small and unimportant. Well, Mom, Danny said, I guess I will just have to remind them why that would be a mistake. The hearing is tomorrow morning, Ambassador Kane said. You will be standing alone in front of representatives from 47 different species. Many of them have never seen a human before. They will be judging not just you, but our entire species. Danny nodded. What do they want to know? They want to know why humans ignore the rules, why we act without thinking, why we risk our lives for strangers. They want to know if we are too dangerous to be allowed to exist as a space-traveling species. That night, Danny could not sleep. He stood at the window of his room and looked out at the alien city. 3 different species of beings walked through the streets. They had built a place where creatures who had evolved on different worlds could live together. It was amazing, but it was also fragile. Danny could see that. The whole thing worked, because everyone followed the same rules. Everyone agreed on what was acceptable behavior. Humans were threatening that balance by acting like humans. Tomorrow, he would have to explain why that was not a bad thing. He would have to convince a room full of aliens that humanity deserved a place in the galaxy. He would have to do it without Any backup, without any weapons, and without any guarantee that he would survive the attempt. Danny smiled. It was exactly the kind of impossible situation that humans were good at handling. Maybe that was what the aliens needed to understand. Sometimes the impossible was just another word for Tuesday. He finally fell asleep thinking about Jake Morrison and the choice he had made. In a few hours, Danny would have to make his own choice about what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of aliens who thought being human was a crime. The Galactic Council chambers were built to make people feel small. Danny Rodriguez walked into the huge round room and looked up at the rows and rows of seats rising toward the ceiling. Representatives from 47 different species sat behind glowing force fields. Each force field was set up to give the aliens the air and environment they needed to survive. Some of the aliens looked like giant lizards. Others were made of living crystal that caught the light and threw rainbows across the room. Some looked like huge slugs with many eyes. A few were so strange that Danny could not figure out what they were supposed to be. All of them were staring at him. Danny walked to the center of the room where a small platform waited. He wore his dress blue uniform with every medal and ribbon in the right place. He had decided not to use the translation machine they offered him. He would speak in the common galactic language that all Marines learned in basic training. The leader of the council was a tall Zephyrian with silver scales that looked like armor. His name was Chancellor Vex. He stood up and spoke in a voice that echoed through the chamber. "Human Danny Rodriguez," he said, "you stand before this council to explain the actions of your species during the incident at Kepler 442. The charges are serious. Your people violated the galactic warfare rules. You attacked another species without permission. You used too much force against the Ravagers." Danny stood straight with his hands behind his back. "I understand the charges, sir. I am here to explain why Captain Morrison and his crew did what they did. The facts are clear," Chancellor Vex continued. "The human ship Helena got a distress call from a Zephyrian passenger ship. Instead of following the rules and asking for military help, Captain Morrison chose to fight a stronger enemy with a cargo ship. The result was that the entire Ravager fleet was destroyed and over 300 Ravagers died." A sound like whispers went through the chamber. Danny could feel the aliens watching him, waiting to see what he would say. A representative from the Crystalline Collective spoke next. It was a being made of living crystal that made musical sounds when it talked. "The math shows that Captain Morrison had almost no chance of winning. His ship was weaker, outnumbered, and not built for fighting. The logical thing to do would have been to run away." "Math and logic do not save lives," Danny replied. "People do." A slug-like alien with many eye stalks leaned forward. This was the representative from the hegemony. The Ravagers were in their own territory. "While we do not like their methods, they are a legal species with rights under galactic law. The humans had no right to interfere." Danny's jaw got tight. "With respect, sir, I do not recognize any law that says we have to let innocent people die while we wait for the paperwork to be approved." Chancellor Vex raised a clawed hand for quiet. "Human Rodriguez, you will explain your species' actions. But first, you will watch the evidence we have collected." The lights in the chamber got dim. A three-dimensional picture appeared above the platform. It showed the Helena incident from different angles, recorded by the surviving Ravager ships and the Zephyrian rescue pods. Danny watched as Captain Morrison's ship, a mining vessel with weapons that had been added later, charged straight at a fleet of real warships. What happened next was 3 hours of the strangest space battle ever recorded. Morrison used his ship's mining tools as weapons. He turned cargo containers into missiles. He used tactics that broke every known rule of space fighting. When the Ravagers expected him to act like a normal ship captain, he did something completely different. The mining ship had a thick hull because it was built to work in dangerous places. Morrison used this like a battering ram, crashing into 2 Ravager ships. When his main weapons stopped working, he ejected his ship's power source and made it explode at exactly the right moment to destroy the remaining enemy ships. This is barbaric, the Crystalline Collective representative said. No civilized species would use such methods. 2,847 Zephyrians went home to their families, Danny said quietly. How is that barbaric? The chamber exploded with noise. Aliens were arguing in dozens of different languages. The translator in Danny's ear was working hard to turn all the different sounds into words he could understand. He heard accusations, legal arguments, and moral outrage. Danny waited patiently with his hands still behind his back until Chancellor Vex got everyone to be quiet. Human Rodriguez, the Chancellor said, you have seen the evidence. The actions of your species were reckless, violent, and completely against all galactic rules. How do you justify such behavior? Danny stepped forward. His voice carried clearly through the chamber. Sir, may I tell you about a man named Jake Morrison? The Chancellor's scales changed color slightly. Among his species, this meant confusion. The individual in question is not on trial here. His species is. But you cannot understand the species without understanding the individual, Danny replied. Jake Morrison is a cargo hauler from Detroit. He has a wife named Linda and 2 kids, Billy and Susan. He has been running supplies to colony worlds for 12 years, and he has never lost a single shipment or crew member. Danny began to walk slowly around the platform. His voice took on the rhythm of someone telling a story instead of making a legal argument. 3 weeks ago, Jake was hauling medical supplies to New Brisbane. Antibiotics, surgical equipment, blood plasma. Things that keep people alive. He was on schedule, making good time, when his communications officer heard a distress signal. The 3-dimensional display changed to show the Helena's Bridge during the incident. Jake Morrison was visible in the captain's chair. He was a middle-aged man with gray hair and worried eyes. The signal was from a Zephyrian passenger ship with 2,847 people on board. Men, women, children, elderly people. Civilians who had done nothing wrong except be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The ship was being attacked by Ravager pirates, and Jake had a choice to make. Danny stopped walking and looked directly at Chancellor Vex. He could follow the rules. Call for military backup, stay at a safe distance, and wait for the proper authorities to handle the situation. That backup was 6 hours away. In 6 hours, those people would have been dead or worse. They would have been sold as slaves for the Ravager Arena Games. A new voice interrupted him. A younger female Zephyrian with silver-blue scales stood up. Human Rodriguez, we appreciate Captain Morrison's intentions, but good intentions do not justify breaking the law. Ma'am, Danny said, may I ask your name? I am Sub-Chancellor Lisa Vex, daughter of the presiding chancellor. Lisa Vex, Danny repeated. Were you on the passenger ship Graceful Dawn 3 weeks ago? The chamber became completely silent. Lisa. Vex's scales changed to a deep blue color, and she slowly nodded. I was returning from a diplomatic mission to the outer colonies. Then you were one of the 2,847 people Captain Morrison saved. Danny's voice was gentle but firm. You were in cabin 247B, traveling with your aide and 2 junior diplomats. When the Ravagers got on your ship, you locked yourself in the cabin and sent a final message to your family. Lisa's scales continued to change colors. Among her species, this meant she was very upset emotionally. How do you know this? Because Jake Morrison read every passenger list, every crew roster, every piece of information about that ship before. He made his decision. He did not see statistics or numbers. He saw 2,847 individual lives, each with families, hopes, and dreams. He saw you. Then he turned to speak to the entire chamber. That is what you do not understand about humans. We do not think in terms of acceptable losses or calculated risks. We think in terms of people. When Jake Morrison looked at that distress signal, he did not see a violation of galactic law. He saw Lisa Vex trapped in a cabin, afraid she would never see her family again. He saw children crying for their parents. He saw elderly passengers who had lived through years of hardship only to face death at the hands of pirates. The chamber was quiet now. Every alien representative was listening carefully to what Danny was saying. You want to know why humans act the way we do? Danny continued. It is because we cannot look at someone in trouble and walk away. We cannot do the math and decide that some people are acceptable losses. Every life matters to us. Every person deserves a chance to go home, to their family. Danny looked around the chamber at all the different species. Jake Morrison knew he might die. He knew his crew might die. But he also knew that if he did nothing, Lisa Vex would die. And he could not live with that. A chamber erupted again with alien voices arguing in dozens of languages. Danny stood quietly in the center of the platform, waiting for the noise to die down. He could see that some of the aliens were angry, some were confused, and some seemed to be thinking about what he had said. Chancellor Vex finally got everyone quiet again. Human Rodriguez, you have seen the evidence. The actions of your species were reckless, violent, and completely against established galactic rules. How do you justify such behavior? Danny looked up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at him. Sir, with your permission, I would like to explain something about human nature that might help you understand. Proceed. Every human child learns a story when they are young, Danny began. It is about a man who sees someone being beaten by robbers on a road. Two other people walk by and do nothing because they are afraid or because helping is not their job. But the third person stops. He helps the wounded man. He takes him to safety and pays for his care. Danny paused, letting his words sink in. We call this person the Good Samaritan. For thousands of years, humans have told this story to teach our children that helping others is more important than following rules or staying safe. The Crystalline Collective representative spoke up. But such behavior is inefficient. It leads to poor decisions and unnecessary risks. You are right, Danny admitted. Helping others is inefficient. Jake Morrison's decision to help led him to risk a 12-man crew and a ship worth 40 million credits to save people he had never met. By your calculations, it was a terrible decision. Danny began walking around the platform again. But that same decision also led him to study Ravager tactics for 3 hours, learning everything he could about their fighting methods and honor codes. It led him to realize that Ravagers always leave an escape route for their victims, not out of kindness, but because they enjoy the chase. The three-dimensional display showed the Hellenes battle again, but this time Danny explained what was really happening. Jake did not attack randomly. Every move was planned. Every risk was measured. He used the Ravagers' own nature against them. When they thought they were chasing wounded prey, they were actually being led into a trap. The use of the reactor as a weapon was unprecedented. The hegemony representative objected. Such tactics could destabilize the entire galactic order. Reactor was never meant to be a weapon, Danny corrected. It was meant to be a sacrifice. Jake Morrison was prepared to die to save those people. The fact that he survived and took the Ravagers with him was just luck. Chancellor Vex had been listening carefully. Now he spoke. Human Rodriguez, you speak of individual sacrifice as if it were a good thing. But such actions, repeated across a species, would lead to chaos. Order exists for a reason. Danny nodded respectfully. Sir, I understand your concern. But let me ask you something. If your daughter had died on that ship, would you consider Jake Morrison's actions chaotic, or would you consider them heroic? The Chancellor's scales changed to a deep gold color. This meant surprise. That is an unfair question. It is the only question that matters, Danny replied, because that is the question every human asks when they see someone in trouble. Not, what does the law say? Or what are the chances of success? But what if that was my daughter? Sub-Chancellor. Lisa Vex stood up again. Her scales were still changing colors as she struggled with her emotions. Human Rodriguez, you saved my life. Captain Morrison saved my life. But the law exists to prevent chaos. If everyone ignores the rules whenever they feel like it, society will collapse. Ma'am, with respect, there is a difference between ignoring rules because you feel like it and ignoring rules because someone will die if you do not act. Danny's voice was firm but gentle. Jake Morrison did not wake up that morning planning to break galactic law. He woke up planning to deliver medicine to sick people. But when he heard your distress call, he had to choose between following the law and saving lives. Danny turned to address the entire chamber. That is what makes humans different from every other species you have encountered. We do not see laws as absolute. We see them as guidelines that exist to protect people. When those same laws prevent us from protecting people, we will break them. The chamber was silent. Danny could feel the weight of thousands of alien eyes on him. He took a deep breath and continued. You are afraid of humans because we are unpredictable. You cannot calculate our responses or model our behavior. But that unpredictability is not a weakness. It is a strength. Danny gestured to the display showing the Helena's battle. Look at what Jake Morrison accomplished. He defeated a superior force using tactics that none of you would have considered. He turned a cargo ship into a weapon of war. He used the enemy's own strengths against them. He did the impossible because he refused to accept that it was impossible. The crystalline collective representative made a sound like breaking glass. Such chaos cannot be tolerated. Order must be maintained. Order is important, Danny agreed. But order without compassion is just tyranny. Rules without humanity are just chains. Danny walked to the edge of the platform, closer to the alien representatives. You have built something amazing here. 47 different species, working together, living in peace. But that peace is fragile, because it depends on everyone being the same. Everyone following the same rules, thinking the same way, acting predictably. He paused, looking around the chamber. What happens when the rules do not work? What happens when the unexpected occurs? What happens when someone needs help and the proper authorities are too far away? Danny pointed to Sub-Chancellor Lisa Vex. 3 weeks ago, that question was not theoretical. It was life and death. And the answer was that one human cargo captain decided that some things are more important than rules. The hegemony representative's eye stalks moved in. What Danny had learned was a sign of agitation. If we allow such behavior, where does it end? Every species will claim moral authority to ignore the law. Not every species, Danny replied. Just the ones who are willing to die for strangers. Just the ones who cannot sleep at night, knowing they could have helped someone and chose not to. Just the ones who think that I was following orders is not a good enough excuse when innocent people are dying. Danny's voice got stronger. You want to know what makes humans dangerous? It is not our weapons or our technology. It is our refusal to accept that some people are expendable. It is our belief that every life has value, even if that life belongs to someone we have never met. The chamber was completely quiet now. Danny could hear his own heartbeat. He had said everything he could think of to say. Now it was up to the aliens to decide if humanity deserved a place in the galaxy. You are right to be afraid of us, Danny said finally, but not because we are violent or chaotic. You should be afraid because we will not let you become comfortable with cruelty. We will not let you decide that some lives matter less than others. We will not let you hide behind rules and regulations when people need help. Danny stood straight and looked directly at Chancellor Vex. Jake Morrison saved 2,847 lives. He broke your laws to do it. And if the same situation happened tomorrow, another human would make the same choice. Because that is what humans do. We help people, even when it is dangerous, even when it is against the rules, even when it seems impossible. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, Sub-Chancellor Lisa Vex stood up. Her scales had changed to a warm silver color. "Human Rodriguez," she said, "you have given us much to think about. This council will consider your words carefully." Danny nodded. "Thank you, Mom. That is all I can ask for." As he walked out of the chamber, Danny wondered if he had done enough. In a few days, the council would vote on humanity's fate. He had given them the best explanation he could for why humans acted the way they did. Now he could only wait and hope that somewhere in that room full of aliens, someone understood that the galaxy might need a species that refused to follow the rules when the rules were wrong. The Galactic Council took 3 days to make their decision. During that time, Danny stayed in the diplomatic section of Centauri Prime. He had a nice room with a view of the alien city, but he felt like a prisoner waiting for his trial to end. Ambassador Kane visited him every day. She brought news from the council chambers, but none of it was good. The aliens were arguing among themselves about what to do with humanity. "The Zephyrians are split," she told Danny on the second day. "Some of them admire Captain Morrison's courage, but others think humans are too dangerous to be trusted. They remember their own violent past and worry the humans will bring chaos to the galaxy." Annie looked out his window at the strange buildings and flying vehicles of the alien city. "What about the others?" "The Crystalline Collective thinks we are unpredictable wildcards who will disrupt their carefully planned society. The hegemony wants to restrict our expansion rights and put human ships under constant monitoring. And the smaller species? Some are afraid of us. Others are curious. A few seem to think we might be useful in certain situations." Kane sat down heavily. "Danny, I think we are going to lose this vote." On the third day, Danny received an unexpected visitor. Sub-Chancellor Lisa Vex came to his room, accompanied by 2 guards. She looked nervous, and her scales kept changing from silver to blue and back again. "Human Rodriguez," she said, "I wanted to thank you personally for what Captain Morrison did, and for what you said in the council chambers. You do not need to thank me, ma'am. I just told the truth." "Yes, but the truth is sometimes dangerous." She walked to the window and looked out at the city. "I have been thinking about your words, about how humans ask themselves, what if that was my daughter, when they see someone in trouble." Danny joined her at the window. "It is a simple question, but it changes everything. My father, Chancellor Vex, has been struggling with this decision. He understands that Captain Morrison saved my life, but he fears what will happen if other species start ignoring galactic law." "What do you think will happen?" Lisa's scales turned a deep gold color. "I think the galaxy needs someone who is willing to break the rules when the rules are wrong. I think we have become too comfortable with order and too afraid of chaos. Sometimes, chaos is necessary to do what is right." The next morning, Danny was summoned back to the council chambers. The huge room was even more crowded than before. Representatives from species that had not been present at the hearing had come to witness the verdict. Danny took his place at the center platform. He wore his dress uniform again, but this time he felt different. He had said everything he could say. Now it was time to face the consequences. Chancellor Vex stood to deliver the verdict. The chamber became completely silent. Human Rodriguez, this council has thought carefully about the matter of your species' actions at Kepler 442. We have reviewed the evidence, considered the law, and debated the implications for galactic order. Danny stood at attention, his face showing no emotion. The charges against humanity are serious. Your species has shown a willingness to ignore established rules, to act without permission, and to use methods that violate accepted ways of warfare. These actions, if left unchecked, could destabilize the careful balance that maintains peace among the stars. A sound like whispers went through the chamber. Danny felt his heart sink. It sounded like they had decided against humanity. However, Chancellor Vex continued, this council must also consider the results of those actions. 2,847 lives were saved. A Ravager fleet that had terrorized civilian ships for months was eliminated. And perhaps most importantly, we have gained understanding about the nature of humanity that forces us to reconsider our previous assumptions. The Chancellor's scales shifted to a warm gold color. The Council has voted. By a count of 31 to 16, with 4 abstentions, humanity will not face punishment for the Kepler 442 incident. Furthermore, we are establishing a new category of galactic law, the human doctrine. Danny blinked in surprise. The human doctrine, sir? The recognition that some species operate under moral rules that go beyond legal frameworks. When civilian lives are in immediate danger and proper authorities cannot respond in time, authorized representatives of such species may act according to their conscience, provided they accept full responsibility for the consequences. Sub-Chancellor Lisa Vex stood up. The Council also wishes to offer humanity a new role within the galactic community. We propose the establishment of the Human Rapid Response Corps, a joint galactic organization that will handle emergency situations requiring immediate action and unconventional thinking. Danny felt a smile trying to form on his face, but he kept his expression neutral. And who would command such an organization? Someone who understands that sometimes the best solution is the one nobody expects, Chancellor Vex replied. Someone who can explain to a galaxy full of logical beings why emotions and instincts sometimes lead to better outcomes than careful planning. The offer was more generous than Danny had dared to hope for, but he could not accept it without talking to his government first. As he stood before the representatives of 47 species, he realized that something important had changed. Humanity was no longer seen as a dangerous threat, but as a necessary balance to the galaxy's tendency toward order and calculation. I will need to consult with my government, Danny said formally. But I can tell you that humans do not walk away from people who need help. If you are offering us a chance to do that on a galactic scale, we will probably say yes. The vote was followed by something Danny had not expected: celebration. Representatives from dozens of species came forward to meet him personally. Many of them had stories about times when they wished someone had been willing to break the rules to help them. Ambassador Kane was practically glowing with relief. Danny, do you understand what just happened? They are not just accepting us into the galactic community. They are asking us to help lead it. 3 months later, the Human Rapid Response Corps was officially established. Jake Morrison was named as its first civilian commander. Danny Rodriguez became its military advisor. Their headquarters was built on a space station at the edge of Zephyrian space, where they could respond quickly to emergencies throughout the galaxy. Their first mission came just 2 weeks after the Corps was activated. A research station studying dangerous solar radiation had been damaged by a solar flare. The station's shields were failing, and conventional rescue ships could not get close enough to help without being destroyed by the radiation. Jake Morrison looked at the problem and saw a solution that no one else had considered. He took a cargo ship loaded with ice and flew it directly into the solar radiation. The ice melted and created a steam cloud that provided just enough protection for rescue ships to reach the station. All 43 researchers were saved. The rescue was completed in record time using methods that no other species would have thought of, but that worked perfectly for the situation. The galaxy was beginning to learn that sometimes the impossible was just another word for Tuesday when humans were involved. Danny never did finish his vacation in Colorado, but he kept his fishing rod in his office on the space station. Some things were worth holding on to, even at the edge of known space. The bottle of whiskey that General Hayes had given him as a diplomatic gift was eventually shared with Chancellor Vex during the signing ceremony for the human doctrine. The Chancellor declared it an acceptable beverage for celebrating impossible victories. Danny thought that was probably the best review whiskey had ever received from a 7-foot-tall alien lizard. He made sure to include that detail in his report to Earth. 6 months after the trial, Danny received a message from Jake Morrison. The cargo captain had adapted well to his new role, but he still missed the simple days of hauling freight between planets. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had just followed the rules that day, Jake wrote. But then I remember Lisa Vex and all those other people who got to go home to their families. I guess some things are more important than following orders. Danny smiled as he read the message. He was standing on the observation deck of the Response Corps' headquarters, watching ships from a dozen different species coming and going. Each ship carried beings who had evolved on different worlds, developed different cultures, and learned different ways of thinking. But they all shared one thing now, the knowledge that sometimes the right thing to do was also the hardest thing to do. And when that time came, they could count on humanity to ask the only question that really mattered. What if that was my daughter? Danny had explained to the galaxy what it meant to be human. Now the galaxy was learning that being human was not about being perfect or following all the rules. It was about caring enough to help, even when helping seemed impossible. The stars looked the same as they always had, but somehow the space between them felt a little less cold. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors or diplomats, but as the species that refused to let anyone suffer alone got. It was, Danny thought, exactly the kind of job that humans were born to do.